It's Thursday, February 13th, 2014. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 63. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy buys a telecom in a bottle, baby. Sydney pulls her app under duress. And I regulate the internet so I can buy an Android smartphone from Nokia. But we start tonight with by far the biggest tech earthquake of the week. Not Flappy Bird, but Comcast and Time Warner.
That's right. This week, Comcast and Time Warner announced their plan to merge. And by that, I mean Comcast will acquire Time Warner in a stock transfer valued at $45.5 billion.
How many
in equity in the new company.
It's 45.5 Instagrams.
It is 45.5 Instagrams. What does exactly half an Instagram look like? According to Comcast's press release, this will result in a combined user base of 33 million people, or a net increase to Comcast's existing subscribers of about 30%. Now, needless to say, this merger has generated a lot of concerns by content creators in both traditional markets, such as CBS, and online, like Netflix and Hulu and all these other free riders. And yes, and us.
Who is powered exclusively by Comcast Internet.
Hello, Comcast.
Hello, Comcast.
The biggest concern is obviously the combination of 33 million subscribers and Comcast's small existing content creation division, which is also known as NBC Universal. That could, and what that could mean for competition. However, of course, Comcast assures us that the merger is in the best interests of consumers because there are so few markets where Comcast and Time Warner directly compete that it would be a horizontal merger instead of, them buying out one of their competitors. So, Sydney, do you think that consumers will see this merger between these two cable giants as a match made in heaven or hell?
Well, considering the number of Facebook posts that I have already seen of this or had seen as of yesterday when this story kind of broke, of people saying, well, this is troubling, or, oh, this can only end badly, I'm going to go with the latter. They can say all they want that, well, this is not direct competition, it's fine, whatever, but, it when we see two companies of this stature and this sort of thing happening, I think it automatically brings to mind, there's, one less option, a little less competition, and that's something that we are all always concerned about when it comes to our various media providers.
Well, it's even worse than that because Comcast is the number one cable and internet provider, and Time Warner is number two. So it would be like Verizon and AT&T deciding, hey, you know what we should do? We should merge.
Well, yes and no. Those are still bigger companies.
Yeah, no, overall those two are bigger.
In terms of subscribers. And also,
it's also important to note that they also have cable and internet packages.
They also, but they use different technology. They don't actually use cable. They either use fiber optics or DSL. So
correct.
There's that. But I think what's interesting here is Time Warner and Comcast are technically competitors, but it's very seldom that they are competitors in market by market, right? Because what we have are de facto monopolies. And so what you end up with a company that just has even more de facto monopolies in all of these different regions.
That's true.
So this is somewhat more troubling. So if I want cable internet, I have exactly one option: Comcast.
Yeah, and that's the way it is in Houston as well.
It's the way it is nationwide, pretty much. The only competition that really exists is the places that get Uverse, which is AT&T's fiber optic thing, or Verizon Fios, which is Verizon's fiber optic thing. That's the only real competitors to these in any market, because DSL sucks. It just does. I have to live with it up in my country home.
DSL is technologically limited.
Well, it's technologically limited and way too distance defined. So I'm relatively close to a DSL hub, and so except during porn o'clock, it's okay. But during porn o'clock, my internet drops to utter slow. Porn o'clock.
Is that a technical term?
No, it works at 11 to 1 a.m. is porn o'clock. The way, network televisions have prime time, which is, 9 to 11, then after prime time is porn o'clock, 11 to 1.
Now, it's important to note that college campuses, porn o'clock is delayed by at least 1 to 2 hours.
Right, but it does bring...
And then you have the after drinking blip at about 2 to 3 a.m.
Right, yes, that's true. So what I'm trying to research here on the fly, because I'm a fool, is... does this include anything that would be considered content creation? I'm seeing here that it might include local sports channels, but that's not like a huge problem.
But you say that Comcast has all the exclusive rights to all of the Houston sports, which has been a big problem in Houston because Comcast bought up all of those about, I guess, a year ago. And so every single major sports team was not viewable on DirecTV, which is what all the bars in town have.
Right.
Because Comcast was showing it only on Comcast Sports Network because they could.
Sure, and it looks like Time Warner has done some similar things. Okay, originally controlled by Time Warner, the film and television production company and cable operator, the company spun out the cable operations in March '09 as part of a large restructuring. Since then, Time Warner Cable has been an entirely independent company, merely continuing to use the Time Warner brand under license from its former parent company. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So no, This is not the Time Warner as in, what makes content. This is the internet aspect, the internet provider aspect, which is still troubling, but not as troubling to me as it would be if Comcast now owned the Time Warner production end as well as NBC Universal.
That would be extraordinarily troubling.
Wow.
That would be very antitrust.
Right. So, while to a certain extent, I think this matters not all that much because it's not like on the local level you're going to see less choice because it's really hard to get less choice in the local travel.
Anyway.
Right. So it just means that Comcast now controls more localities.
Horizontal merger is that, and it says that specifically in there, like great reasons why this is good for everybody.
Sure. I mean, they would say that. But
which is linked. It'll be linked in the show notes if you want to go read it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I skimmed that article too. And to a certain extent, the core thesis there is right. In that it's not going to decrease choice in the market for most people. Because I don't know of any markets where Comcast and Time Warner are both options. It's either Comcast or Time Warner. And now it's pretty much
I'm sure there are markets where it exists, but they are not extraordinarily common. But so there is an interesting article from who is this? This is Charles Cooper over at CNET, which by the way, CNET is owned by CBS. Which they're part of CBS Interactive,
a direct competitor with NBC Universal, a Comcast company.
So I'm sure that he's not biased at all.
Unlike the thing that happened with the Hopper.
Yeah. So the executive editor at CNET News. Anyways, so he makes sure to point out that one of the ways that this could be bad for competition is that, or troubling for like CBS in particular, is this past summer, CBS and Time Warner Cable had a standoff in, I believe it was everywhere.
Yeah.
But
this happens.
Right, where CBS increased their fee or something and Time Warner said, no, we're not going to pay that. And it led to a month of Time Warner customers not getting CBS and them finally pushing CBS or Time Warner to say, just pay it, give us CBS back. But that in a situation where you have that many more subscribers to leverage, that CBS won't win that battle. And other content providers might not win that battle.
Yeah, but okay, I'm sorry. I have a hard time getting really up in arms about that particular aspect. Right?
Well, that was an example.
Sure, but I mean, this keeps happening, right? Like this happened with AMC, and this has happened other places, where they want to raise their rates.
Usually the channels win.
Usually the channels win, but I'm not actually sure I root for the content creators on that one, because in the end you pay more, because your cable rates will go up because of that.
Right, this is the transmission fee thing that they're suing Aereo over.
I mean, yeah, that's a little different because what they're suing Aereo over is the rebroadcasting.
Right, well, but in that Aereo is not paying the transmission.
Isn't paying it.
Whereas these cable providers are, and where CBS and all of these big four are increasing their transmission fees, they see Aereo as stealing money from them because they're not paying them.
Yeah, but that's why
And-
Aereo is really careful to have one antenna per person.
Right.
Because then it is no different from me sticking an antenna out my window. But what gets complicated is, so what the cable providers are paying to the content creators is not just for their local stations, but also for their cable-only stations. So not
Right.
just CBS, but CBS Sports. Or not just NBC, but Universal and NBC Sports.
CBS,
and
I think the example is there's also like TNT and
TNT.
TBS and USA
Yeah.
are all CBS cable channels.
Right,
Cable
and so like
channels.
ABC, which is Disney, isn't just ABC; it's
It's also
the Disney
ESPN,
channel.
which is
It's
probably the
ESPN,
most expensive.
which is actually, by the way, most of the cost of your cable package. Actually, this
It's
is
worth
a fact that most of the cost of your cable package is just paying for ESPN.
That's unfortunate.
And the biggest reason people don't get rid of their cable package
ESPN.
is ESPN. So I think that ESPN can charge that much. But
Well, that's exactly what it is, and that's one of the reasons why, if you look at it, all the major networks, the broadcast networks, are getting their own sports networks now. So
and
Fox Sports.
NBC has locked up the big Premier League.
Premier League, Formula One, and the Olympics. So I've been spending half my week on NBC Sports, thanks to the Olympics, and I'll spend many more weeks thanks to Formula One. And Fox just got rid of Speed and created Fox Sports One, a direct ESPN competitor. CBS Sports now also has the CBS Sports Network. They're all doing this thing where they want to directly copy the ESPN model because they've realized how effing lucrative it is.
How much money ESPN can charge for what they do.
Right. So speaking of effing lucrative, what happened with Flappy Bird?
Like cats on the internet, birds in the App Store just have a way of going viral. But the App Store has lost one of its fine feathered friends this week when Dong Yen, and I'm sorry about that last name. Somebody please tell me how to pronounce this because it's a very common last name and I'm going to butcher it, so I apologize. But anyway, creator of Flappy Bird removed his insanely popular game from the App Store. So Flappy Bird hit the iOS App Store on May 24th of 2013. It was pretty much a simple game, but deviously so, apparently incredibly difficult, in which players are navigating a pixelated yellow bird through a course of somewhat Mario-looking pipes, just a little bit Mario-looking, by tapping on your phone screen to make it flap. Now, I never actually played it, but it's a basic game, so pretty easy to describe. So it had been the top download from the App Store for nearly a month, and an estimate from The Verge said that Nguyen was netting about $50,000 a day from ad revenue from this game.
Now, he has never reported. All he has confirmed is that he was making
day?
a lot.
A day, yes. And his statement was, I don't really know, it's a lot. And so that 50,000 is a speculative number. But yeah, that's a lot of money. But he was, despite that, not happy. He began kind of expressing his dissatisfaction with the app's popularity last week, saying he didn't like the attention that he was receiving. He wanted to be left in peace. Just wasn't very pleased with this sudden spotlight that was on him. And so he followed through and removed the app from the App Store on Sunday. And since then has stated in an interview that he pulled it not due to legal concerns, as some speculated, based on, again, the Mario-looking pipes involved. People were saying, he's gotten threats from Nintendo, which, of course, again, is complete speculation. But what he said was that
these aren't people familiar with the matter.
Not even people familiar with the matter. These are people
he directly
familiar
said
with looking at the app. And he said, no, that's not it. And, knowing Nintendo, they probably would have been a little more vocal about it, and we probably would have known. But that's my own personal speculation. So what he said is it had nothing to do with legal, but rather, basically the app just became something he didn't want it to be. He had designed Flappy Bird to be, quote, something that you play in a few minutes when you are relaxed. but he felt that it had become too addictive, and he just wasn't happy with that. It was stressing him out to be getting all the press attention. He didn't like what his app had become, and now he says he's sleeping better and he's happier now that it's gone from the App Store. And so this app being removed from the store does not in any way affect those who have already downloaded it. So if you have it, it's staying. You can still play it. And he also said that he's going to continue to develop new apps. But despite all of this, possibly, in my opinion, more shocking than the removal of Flappy Bird from the App Store in the beginning are people's reactions to that. So Nguyen has received a multitude of abusive tweets.
Oh yeah.
And by abusive, we're talking about, death threats. People saying, "I'm going to go get a gun and find you and shoot you," to him on Twitter.
Fascinating.
Or removing a free app from an app
the
store?
App Store, yes. He's a terrible person and they're going to murder him. And this is not
fascinating.
Yeah. So I definitely have opinions on this one, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to you guys first. How do we feel about his reaction, first of all, to the game's popularity, and then the subsequent reactions to how he chose to deal with that?
I do think this is an overreaction. I can understand
On everybody's part.
on everyone's part, but I think he missed possibly an obvious way to handle this. Is to stop being a sole creator and hire a publicist. I feel like if you can't handle, we're not entirely sure if an inability to handle the pressure was actually part of it, or that he just saw his creation being abused in a way that he never meant it to. And so if it's an issue of his creation being abused, I can understand the artistic impulses to do whatever the heck he wants with his creation. But if it really was about public pressure, hire a publicist. I mean, if you really are making $50,000 a day, you can hire a decent publicist for 2 days worth of revenue, like a really good publicist for 2 days worth of revenue. Heck, I'll be your publicist for a day worth of revenue, right? So I mean, there's enough money coming in that he doesn't need to continue to be the sole creator without totally splitting up his return on investment. So I wonder if this was a failure to see a way out. And just a gut reaction, like when Phil Fish announced that he was no longer going to make Fez 2 because of just how the internet was treating him. Now, I don't, detract from Phil Fish's or creator Flappy Bird's ability to do this. It's their creation. They're the creators. They can do whatever the heck they want. And I kind of respect him standing by his artistic principles. But if the issue is being overwhelmed, I can understand that. And that sucks. And you shouldn't have to go through that. So hire a community team to handle that. Because community teams are exactly there. And publicists and community teams are that bridge between the public, who can be massively abusive and terrible, and the creator, who wants to be shielded and be able to create. If that's what you need to be creative, wonderful. If you're making enough money, hire a team to handle that. Good Lord. Don't pull your app. When you're the biggest app on the App Store, without, there is some accusation that he gamed the system and that's how he became the biggest app. I don't know. This could just be a total word of mouth thing.
Especially with this, I'm not sure if that you could even believe that.
Oh, I don't know.
If his goal was to be the most popular app, and now he's pulling it because it's so popular.
This is still us taking what he says at face value, which I don't necessarily think we have to. It's not the only way to read this situation. It could be that he was worried that he was going to be found out for how he gamed the system, or if he was going to be he was being stressed out partly because of the copyrights concerns, or who knows, right?
And there are people who are saying, "Oh, he just pulled it for a little bit to get people talking, and he's going to put it back up."
Like Chevy and the Camaro.
Yeah, but we all knew that they were going to bring it back.
Yeah. I don't actually think this is coming back. I think he may launch a new game that now he has some hype for, and his other games are still up in the App Store and doing well. Like, I just wonder at his decision to pull it if it's because of public pressure. Because there are ways to handle public pressure not on your own. Hire a team.
Yeah, but that in and of itself is pressure and stress. The process of finding those people and managing those people.
Well,
and
this is a guy who,
if this is legitimately a guy who, just designed this app in a couple of days, threw it up because he thought it would be fun. Even something like that can be overwhelming. And I just feel sorry for the guy.
Sure.
He has, the entire tech press and gaming press scrutinizing his every choice, calling him a liar, saying, oh, he says this, but it's really like, leave the guy alone for Pete's sake. I'm sorry, but and maybe I'm just being naive, but I feel the strong call to stand up on behalf of the socially awkward and the introverted. Not everybody wants to have to deal with, I don't know, $50,000 a day sounds great.
Well,
but
and this almost like leads me to ask the question of how does he define success?
Sure.
Because many would define, that kind of, you're number one in the iOS app store. By the way, I'm on Android and I never had an opportunity.
No, it was on Android. It was on Android as well.
It never got to there on Android. And then it got pulled.
Yeah, I'm just saying, this was a cross-platform app. This was not an iOS exclusive.
Because I had just heard about Flappy Bird, and then last week, right before it got pulled.
Yeah, I think it had filtered up, into the game press, especially when the revenue numbers had been released or figured out.
Yeah, but what is your measure of success in this kind of, because most people that would be success. You are number one in the app store. You are, $50,000 a day projected ad revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That would be most developers' dream, and you can just kind of sit there and wait for EA to buy your game from you for,
But he's also said it's not that. What's
1/10
fascinating?
of an Instagram.
What? Sure, well, I'll take 1/10 of an Instagram. But what I think is fascinating here is that he's said it's not for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
well, now that he's pulled it, that's definitely that makes sense. But
I don't know if that meant that to me that doesn't make sense.
Well, because if he pulled it, then whatever his reasons are, he had a reason to pull it.
Sure.
And so selling it would be, because if you're going to sell Flappy Birds, then whoever you're selling it to is going to put it back up there.
Right. Which makes me think it's either copyright concerns or what he says. The biggest, to me, the biggest.
I think the artistic argument is the best argument I've heard.
The thing that makes the most sense, given that he won't sell it, is the artistic issue. That it's not being used the way he thought it would, and he thinks it's being detrimental to the world. Now, I'm not sure I disagree with him that Flappy Birds is detrimental to the world.
But there's a long list of other things that are detrimental to the world. Facebook,
I
think would be number one on my list.
So we're going to give him a hard time because he's more responsible than Zuckerberg?
I give
Zuckerberg a hard time all the time.
Exactly.
There's a lot going on here that I think is just not totally clear. And so I'm not willing to give him a complete pass and always assume complete altruism, partly because I think it's part of the job of the press to sit back and go, let me think about that for a second. I think there's a lot of evidence here that points to him doing exactly what he says he's doing. That doesn't not make it a strange decision.
It's a strange decision that maybe none of us would have made, but once again, he must have had a very good reason for doing it, whether it was copyright or artistic.
Sure, he's essentially throwing money away, so presumably there's a pretty good reason. And, it's not like he's also making no money, as his other apps are doing all right. Thanks to the
and he's
success
still
of Flappy
making
Bird.
ad revenue off of Flappy Birds.
And he's still making ad revenue off of the 50 million downloads of Flappy Bird, and if you're really good at sideloading apps on Android, you can still install
It's
Flappy
not hard
Birds.
to sideload apps on Android.
Right, so, or if you jailbreak your iPhone, you can anything where you can sideload, you can still get the app. And it's not like he's losing money, in fact, he would be making money. You're going against his intent, but there's still ways to get the app. And plenty of clones. Sesame Street made Flappy Bert.
Yay.
Which is
No.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, and it's actually made by the folks that do Sesame Street. This is not like a weird rip-off of Bert. This is actually Bert doing Flappy Birds. So, speaking of strange decisions on the internet, stop me if you've heard this before. The FCC is going to announce its plan for net neutrality.
Wait, I've heard this story before.
Yeah, okay. So Chairman Wheeler and the FCC have been going through a tough spot since the court struck down the way they regulate ISPs on a legal technicality, while confirming their ability to regulate ISPs. With the recent controversies about Verizon potentially throttling traffic already, and a call from 5 Democratic senators to act quickly, Wheeler announced Monday at the University of Colorado Law School, quote, in its Verizon versus FCC decision, the Court of Appeals invited the Commission to act to preserve a free and open internet. I, Wheeler, accept that invitation, and in the coming days, I will outline how I propose to proceed. End quote. Okay, so let's be clear. We are not clear of what this will look like. There is no plan yet. All this is the wonderful Washington announcement that there will be a plan. I have a plan.
I
will
plan.
Announce it soon.
My plan is to have a plan.
I have
Is it a secret plan?
It's a secret plan. It's a very secret plan.
A secret plan to fight inflation?
Right. So, like, it's slightly difficult to know what the plan is, because all he has presented with is a minefield. So we're not clear what this looks like. The simplest would be to classify the carriers as the internet providers as common carriers in the same way that phone companies and package deliverers are classified. And the most complete would be to revise the Communications Act of 1996, which obviously involves an action from Congress.
I vote for simple option.
The simple option has a lot of baggage and ramifications, such as the ISPs going, in the words of Saturday Night Live, a petit déjeuner. The congressional option, could take up to a decade. The last revision of the Communications Act took 8 years to get through. Imagine where we'll be technologically in 8 years. And Wheeler recognizes that that's a bad idea, and he needs to act sooner. So what do we think Wheeler should do?
Press the big red button.
Look, there is a kill switch. We can just shut the sucker down.
Screw it. Done.
Shut off the internet. You can't stop the signal, Jimmy.
If you want to get something done, I say do whatever you can to avoid anything that requires Congress.
The opposite of progress is Congress.
I have had it with this Congress.
Exactly. I mean, just turn around. Park the wagon and float it, but don't go through Congress.
The problem is without going through Congress, he's kind of tied. The court has already said you can't regulate them like a common carrier unless you classify them as a common carrier. What going through Congress would let him do would be to create a new legal framework that would have a third option other than common carrier and what we have now, where there can be explicit net neutrality things built into the law that creates a new framework. He can't build a new framework without a new law. All he can do is work within the existing frameworks.
All right, new plan. Do both. I think that's actually the solution.
Well, the problem is no one thinks he's actually going to classify them as common carriers because of the political ramifications. These are hugely... Look, Comcast just dropped $45 billion on Time Warner. These are hugely vested interests that spend a lot of money.
Oh, they combined another fun thing from the Comcast article. They combined $25 million in lobbying reported.
Right. That's a lot of money getting thrown around.
That's just reported.
And they have basically said that to classify them as a common carrier would be the end of the ever-living world. So I don't think... It sounds to me like common carrier is the logical but possibly politically undoable option, and the congressional option takes too long. So that's why I have no idea what this plan is, because I don't see a way forward. Luckily, I'm not the chairman of the FCC, because I would have just classified them as a common carrier and told them all where to go and how to get there.
Well, see, that's got to be the plan, though. Or like, you are common carriers, however, these are the things that we will not enforce.
But he has been on record saying traffic shaping and some amount of throttling is okay if it's to regulate the blah, 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 blah. I mean, he's said,
I hate that. I hate that he has said that.
Right. Like, he's on record as saying that. So, like, that seems to rule out that he's going to have a spine and classify them as a common carrier, which is what should have been happened from the beginning, or we wouldn't be having these discussions. Because they should be a common carrier.
They are. They're functioning in the way a common carrier used to function for, like, telephones and
Right, and most of these companies, actually all of these companies, are also phone companies, where they are functioning as a common carrier.
have to be regulated by the FCC.
And look, the FCC has the ability to regulate, which means they can classify them as a common carrier. That just doesn't. This just doesn't need the way
Makes
they're.
my head hurt.
Sure, look. I will be fascinated to see this plan because the only logical thing to me is common carrier or nothing. So, like, what are you gonna do, Wheeler? Because it's common carrier or nothing, or Congress.
Well, well, exactly, or nothing.
Or yeah,
I'm just sitting thinking
You're
about
being redundant.
the sheer amount of time it will take to get the majority of Congress to even understand what we're talking about.
well, and the problem is this now. It's a
That's
huge.
what you pay congressional aides for.
There are lots of old guys there.
That's
Yeah.
there are lots of congressional aides.
They've been doing better. I mean, and okay, so the famous Ted Stevens quote about
I was
a
just
series
gonna
of
say
tubes. Like, I wrote about that for my thesis, my undergraduate thesis. And actually what he said isn't all that dumb. He didn't understand what he was saying. But
No,
it
what he
actually
said is brilliant.
what he
but
said is brilliant. The internet
the
is
fact
a
that
series
he
of
actually
tubes.
believed it was dumb.
Well, the internet is actually like a series of tubes rather than a big truck. Big truck you can keep throwing stuff on. A series of tubes, the tubes can get clogged. Okay? It's actually a really interesting analogy for the internet.
I'm just imagining 20-something congressional aides beating their heads into chalkboards after trying to explain this.
Sure.
Series of tubes was. I mean, that was whoever wrote that.
It's a
wasn't
brilliant
Ted
speech.
Stevens.
He
It
just
was-
didn't deliver it
A
real well.
lot of infographics.
But Ted Stevens actually believed it.
Who knows? Ted
No,
Stevens is also the man who built a bridge to nowhere. So let's just.
It was good for jobs.
It was good for jobs. So I don't know. The problem is this is becoming very political in like a partisan political way, and so you've got the Democrats pushing. You've got the Democrats pushing on.
Wait.
Wheeler
So
to
they're
do
both
something.
saying freedom
They're both saying freedom, but freedom means different things.
and America.
Right, but again, freedom means different things.
Ugh.
Freedom from is it freedom for individual speech or is it freedom for corporations from unnecessary regulation?
I think
I
this
always love the
Congress
term
can make
unnecessary
anything
regulation.
partisan. They really can.
But their whole job is to look. The House of Representatives runs constantly. It's constantly running for election. There's nothing in the House of Representatives that isn't hugely partisan, minus like dedicating flags and honoring veterans. Like that's about it.
Yeah, just you wait.
Yeah. Okay. So, speaking of hugely partisan issues, there have been rumors of a Nokia Android phone kicking around the internet for months. And it seemed like one of those things that would never come to the light of day, given that Microsoft has recently acquired Nokia.
They're working on acquiring.
They're in the process.
Fully acquired.
The Chinese regulators still have not approved. However,
Communists.
yeah, really,
It's actually true.
not really. They're not really communist.
You
However,
socialists.
no, they're not even that. They are much. They have a better free market than we do sometimes.
Off topic, off topic.
However, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Nokia will show off the Nokia X, running Android, a forked version of Android, at Mobile World Congress in a couple weeks. If that is true, the question then becomes, what does Microsoft do with this phone? Predicted to be a new entry in Nokia's Asha line of feature phones, which Microsoft acquired, once the acquisition is complete. What do we think they're going to do?
Well, first, Motorola is going to sue the pants off of them for.
Well, it's
Patent
not.
or
That's
trademark
probably
infringement.
just the code name. Because
You
right
say
now it was
that.
Project Normandy. Look, I think
Look,
X.
they should release it as Project Normandy
Yeah,
because they're storming the beaches.
they are storming the beaches. Yeah. So,
I
go ahead.
I don't think Microsoft will keep it.
Okay, so that would be my gut reaction to, and that was my gut reaction the last time we talked about this story. However, I read an interesting editorial by Mary Jo Foley over at her blog on ZDNet. And she's kind of a long-time Microsoft reporter and relatively with good sources and an extremely smart lady. And she makes an argument that with Microsoft turning more to a software focus and having a software person at its head, having an Android phone that's running a whole bunch of Microsoft apps, which was what this would be. It would be running Here Maps and Xbox Music and all these kind of Windows Phone-esque things, is good for the software. And so with Nadella at the head, there is a logical argument that could be made for Microsoft making this move based on software.
Yeah, but you know what software it's not good for?
What?
Windows Phone.
But Microsoft, what's the biggest division of what's the biggest earner for Microsoft? Hands down.
Enterprise.
Close. Office. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Office, which is wrapped in
Distinction without a difference.
No, because it is also a consumer-facing brand.
No, that's true.
Office 365 has been hugely successful for them. Office is now the bread and butter of that company. It is no longer operating systems. Okay? And so if this is a chance to get their software out there, this is what that company really is. In this modern world of, apps running in browsers, actual operating system matters very little. And this will look like Windows Phone. This will not be full Android. This will be totally forked like Amazon. So you're going to be running all of the Microsoft apps in an Android environment, in the open source sense of Android, not in the Google tightly controlled sense of Android.
See, but there's only really one good reason to do Android in this way, and it's cost.
Well,
because Windows charges, or Microsoft charges for its Windows Phone.
Yeah, but Microsoft's not going to charge itself.
Right. That's why I think it's going to go away.
Because I've heard, but I've heard a hardware argument. They have not been able to get what I understand from my reading is they have not been able to get Windows Phone to run on a feature phone that level. On a phone that costs like 15, 20 euros, which is what the Asha cost, less than $50. They've got it down to a $100 phone with the Lumia 510, which is a great phone.
Which is a great, and I think they just released a new one, 512 or something.
Sure, but yeah, they've got $100 unlocked with running Windows 8, Windows Phone 8, but they can't seem to get any further down market and have it run. And Asha's
Which is interesting because it's a lightweight operating system.
Relatively lightweight.
Well, yeah, but have you seen Android phones?
Right.
They throw power at them so they work.
Right, but that would be full Android that you can ruin. This will be forked Android that's tightly controlled and can be made much more lightweight. Theoretically.
I think forked Android is fundamentally forked, but that's my personal opinion.
Well, look, that's what happens when you open source it. This isn't going to be like Samsung and a skin. This is going to be like a totally reworked
that's not
thing.
forked. That's just
crap.
Broken.
That's just junk.
I don't think that. I think because Microsoft won't sell, new Windows to themselves.
I mean, if they can get the right price point and still hardware that can run Windows Phone, this is a moot point. Because they'll just switch it over to Windows Phone, and the reason Nokia was doing this was to save money on their Asha line, and that doesn't become an issue when it's Microsoft, because Microsoft's not going to charge itself.
And I do think that if the hardware argument is true, and I don't know if it's true.
I think it's currently true. That could change once they get Asha in-house.
So long as that hardware argument is true, I think that's the only reason to keep this. Because of the software and all of those other things, yes. But if you can run Windows Phone 8 on low-power hardware, like a 20 to 30 euro hardware, like the Asha line, then why would you run Android?
But think about this too. So if the Lumia 510 this year is $100, what is it next? What does that hardware cost next year? $50,
$30.
Right. So there you go.
It's actually free with your contract.
Well, no, but I'm
kidding.
These are for the developing world where they buy their phones off contract, where they buy their phones.
So that's
outright.
like for the rest of the world,
right? But that's what the Asha line's for. I mean, you can buy them on Newegg for like $50, but no one uses them in the United States. But they're like all over Africa and all over South America. I've seen them.
I want an Asha phone. You said these things are indestructible, like my old.
They're absolutely indestructible. They're amazing. There was one sold at the corner store in the Bañado where I was working. I almost bought it because I was like,
"Can I get one of these in Spain?"
Yeah, you can buy it on Newegg now and have it be your phone in Spain.
That's my plan.
Chinese Camino souvenir.
So, speaking of buying souvenirs, it's this week's last call. So Jimmy, tell me about this.
So if you love the idea of a worm in your bottle of tequila,
Yes.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
and who doesn't, then this marketing strategy is made for you. Not because it involves tequila.
What? That I'm less interested.
So Sony has announced an ad campaign in New Zealand where they will sell their waterproof MP3 players in bottles filled with water in vending machines.
This is awesome.
The idea is that the
fabulous.
submerged MP3 player will demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that these headphones can stand up to being worn while swimming,
This is awesome.
which apparently people do in New Zealand.
Yeah.
The product is
I
called
would.
the Bottled Walkman,
Yes.
and apparently is working fairly well as a concept. So what else can we expect to be bottled next by Sony? A bottled Sony Z1?
No, the bottled Sony Action Cam is next, I think.
Well, see, but the Z1 is the waterproof phone.
Oh, I know
I think
what
that
it
would
is.
sell pretty well.
I love this. I this is my fault that it's in the lineup because I love this idea. If you see, there's a great video in the story that's linked off.
Well, the man has a New Zealand accent. And
He also has a New Zealand accent.
accent.
So excited. But like, so you walk up to the vending machine in your gym. You need this is like a nice reusable sports bottle. This isn't like just like a junky bottle of water. And then floating in the water that you're already going to buy is the MP3 player, which is really slick. Like, it's just like headphones that play MP3s. They're awesome. Like, it's a cool
It made
device.
me kind of want to get a pair of those
Yeah.
headphones.
I'm seeing
I mean,
this for the
like-
next Summer Olympics.
Yes.
Like the entire New Zealand swim team is going to have these.
Or at least the Japanese swim team. Come on. Like,
And they're going to have, rules about whether or not you can wear MP3 player while you're swimming.
Why not? You can't hear anyway.
they use auditory. That's a starting gun that starts the race.
Well,
I think it
yeah,
would give you a
that, but-
distinct disadvantage.
Okay,
But if you want to
then.
do
Yeah,
it,
but how much? What they're going to kill 25 dB? Yeah, I think you'll still hear the starting gun.
if you have music on, it will kill more than that.
No, what you need to do is you need to get it so that the music doesn't start until the starting gun.
Yes,
There you go.
Take a very simple algorithm.
Yes. On gun,
On sound above X amount of decibels, turn on music.
if gun, play music.
So then you hear the gun and Enter Sandman starts going in your head.
I would swim faster.
I would swim faster. Or you could be like the zombie swim thing, where like it's telling you how close your competitors are, but they're zombies, and you hear the.
They have that for running.
Exactly, that was my point. So, anyways, we should probably get out of
Swimming
here.
zombies.
I just think this is
Such
this,
a
I-
terrifying
No,
thought.
you can't teach the zombies how to swim.
I feel like
This-
they would melt.
this is so much better than the Best Buy vending machines that just have tech things in airports.
Agreed.
This is just sweet.
or hotels in Vegas, as we discovered.
Right, or hotels in Vegas. God, I don't want to talk about Vegas. If you have feedback for the show, podcast at textlastcall.com, facebook.com/textlastcall, pinterest.com/textlastcall, or at textlastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.
Trey's ballrooming out of control.
Why did we invent a dance?
What do
We
you mean
didn't
we?
invent anything.
Why do you always blame everything on me? Why are all the dumb ideas my idea?
I don't know, Trey. Let's unpack that.